ninja first impressions, done. The next little segment that's kind of tied to that is, as a part of becoming a ninja, it means, of course, I finished the rogue storyline, which I'm almost a little sad about because I kind of like those little characters. So I've done the storyline for rogue and archer. And then once it became time to become a bard, I was like, you know what, I want to go, in the ninja direction. So yeah, I want to talk about the rogue storyline. Number one, it's, what's her name again? The rogue writer.
Oh, Natsuko Ishikawa?
Yes, Natsuko Ishikawa. Yes. The number one, it's her. She wrote that. She wrote Dark Knight. She led Shadowbringers. Big, community loves her. So
Crystal Tar, Azim Step.
So it was a big thing for me where I was like, okay, well, I really want to see where... I just wanted to see her earlier work.
Yeah.
So I was doing that, right? And there's just so many little things in the rogue storyline that made me think like, okay, this is stuff that the Blizzard needs to learn because it's interesting in how it works so well.
Yeah.
So there's a few different things. What I liked first about the rogue storyline is all of the characters spoke colloquially as they they should have.
You could barely understand them, like.
As people in Limsa.
Yeah.
So it takes a little bit of a second for my character to get them. And I'm like, oh, okay. But then I start to vibe with it because I'm used to how they talk. It's like they're willing to go a little bit more challenging and in universe with their dialogue. And that makes it feel quite immersive. That's a good thing. So, that dialogue is immersive and it kind of just builds out the world and stuff. And I don't know, man. It feels... it just feels more immersive, the way that they deal with... See, it's not just the actual writing of the dialogue, too. It's the framing.
Yeah.
It's the framing. Because whenever they pull me into a cutscene, it's generally not them grabbing the camera and, like, just showing me a bunch of characters having a conversation. In a way, it literally is that, but it's a conversation. I see my character emote back to those characters. Those characters address me. It's like a little dialogue scene. And that means that I actually spend a bit of time with those characters. And instead of me just looking at a big wall of text or, sitting there looking at an NPC barking words out in my vicinity, I'm clicking through the dialogue, and there's a lot to be said for the actual technical implementation. At what point do you want your dialogue to autoplay? At what point do you want to click to motivate it? There's a lot of technical nerdy shit that, obviously given the game we're making, we had to dive pretty deep into. And it just does all of those things in a way that makes you a part of the conversation with those characters. And I think that just means that it all feels really believable. Really, really, really believable. And then for the specifics of the storyline itself, it's a very simple story. But while telling that simple story, it has some nice character moments. We get some nice lore reveals. It does like world building for Limsa. That's really nice. You've got the yellow jacket Lalafell character who's
Milala, yep.
Yeah, she's great. The characters are just generally, they're really simple, but they are well executed.
Yeah.
And they have this dialogue that feels quite real. And they set up, the stakes in such a way where I don't feel like I'm the helper of these characters. I'm in this group of rogues, and I'll go and do a thing, and another person who's a bit higher in station than me with the rogues, they've been there for longer, but they're going off and doing another quest. I come back, I've done my thing, they've done their thing, and based on both of us doing our things, the next thing happens. Yep. It doesn't feel like it's weird. It feels like I'm kind of part of the crew.
Because you are.
Because I am, yeah. There's so many just nice little subtleties in how they do it that I just really liked. And then just the way the plot progressed and its ending, it was just all nice. Yeah. It was well done. It was just a nice little simple story, gave its characters some time, and it just makes me think like, wow, if this is her early work, that's... Because, I'm not going to sit here and say that it's, like, mind-blowing, incredible stuff.
This is good, like...
It's just good, and it's, like, refreshing when you get, like, good little self-contained stories that are there in an MMO. And I think there's just some fundamentals of how the narrative is presented in FF that are interesting. In a case like this, where it all feels tight, it feels like everything is main quest and there is no side quest, it just really works great. I would say that maybe it also contributes to some of the filters in A Realm Reborn, because if you are treating your plot line with, you know, you're spending that much time in things, you're doing all of that, but then it's the boring sludge stuff, then you're going to create some filters for players, and those are the filters that people talk about with ARR. But then I suppose you apply that to the further on expansions where stuff's maybe a bit more tight or whatever, but yeah. And then the other one, you know, I did the Archer, and it was just, you know, it was neat. There was I don't want to use like all the proper nouns because I want this to be able to speak to everybody. But basically, you've got you know, there's the two cat girl characters. Yep. Who are Mikute, which of course is the character that I am as well. But they just have this nice little story where, you know, she doesn't believe in herself. You know, she's being talked down to by the big dickhead. And again, it's just like simple story executed well enough. And, you know, you're pretty happy with it. So it's yeah. You can like see them in real time figuring out how to do story as you go through ARR. It's quite interesting.
Yeah.
And just seeing the various bits at various levels of engagement. Apparently I am about to hit one of the big filters because I've just got rid of Titan.
Yeah, I think you might be basically in the middle of it if you're doing the Wineport stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm past. I don't want to give the spoiler of what happens. So, yeah, it's just the way they do the narrative. And I'm just, you know, when I think about the story of Chains of Domination, I mean, if so much more of that, I mean, in a way, had less combat and had way more dialogue where I'm actually clicking through. It's just that thing, you know, if you think about a game like Mass Effect, people don't see the dialogue in that as a slog to get through.
It's the game.
Yeah, they finish a mission. You know, you finish something in Mass Effect 2. When you go back to the Normandy, what do you want to do? You want to check in with all the characters to see what they think. Actually having that character dialogue, it's like Blizzard are scared of it. They're scared of just being like, hey, let's have a conversation with Jaina or something. So yeah, I think there's a lot of learnings. Blizzard really needs to just fundamentally rethink how they do dialogue and quest text. In a pretty big way, and they need ways to make the player feel like their character is engaged with all of the other characters. And I think that's just where, you know, our NPCs need to have a freaking memory of who we are. It's nice the times, you know, with like Vash, where, you know, we do get that, but it needs to happen with the big characters like Thrall. You know, I need to have a sense that my character has a bit of a relationship with Thrall. Thrall actually, you know, I need to feel like Thrall would actually know my name instead of calling me Mawwalker all the time.
Yeah, it's I don't even think it's just like, because I mean the Vash stuff's nice, but I feel like there's a lot more of that could feel less tongue-in-cheeky or kind of obvious to me, because I can tell that's literally like, that's just a thing of, oh, has this player have a recorded kill in Vash, then flick that. And I feel like it needs to be more kind of story-oriented or story-related, just because it feels like it's almost like it doubles down on the idea that every expansion is completely fresh. Because it feels like that on a power perspective. When you log in, you're like, oh, all my grinds were for actually nothing. I mean, they weren't. They were for use. They were useful at the time, but now they're for nothing. So this isn't an evolving world. This is, you know, bullshit. But it's the fact that it feels like that on the story front as well, where you don't feel like your actions matter now in Shadowlands because they didn't, because you weren't driving the story. The story was just going to happen with other players, or, you know, with the nebulous blob that is the player character that isn't you. But it doesn't feel that way in FF because it's a nice linear story where everyone's like, oh yeah, it's you, it's you. You're the hero. And I think that's one of the things that, like, especially with Ishikawa leading stuff, I'm really, really happy to see where that goes, because between Dark Knight, Alchemist, and sort of the Asthma Step stuff, and then Shadowbringers, there's a lot of really, really focusing on the player character and their involvement that feels fucking fantastic. And I feel like that should be, like, almost for any game going forward, but specifically for how it's handled with an MMO, is kind of masterful in a way. And that's the thing they're lacking. Like, I mean, like, I've been hearing the early ARR content. It's like it's feeling pretty good. Some people, no, I'm not at Wineport. I'm past Wineport. I'm doing things at the church after Titan. I obviously don't want to say where I am because there's a, you know, major plot involving characters and stuff that would be sort of a spoiler if I talked about it more.
I can see why wine port and just going around for that bottle of wine and all that stuff. You know, the Costa del Sol is like a bit of a... Oh, yeah.
Very long fetch quest.
Yeah. I mean, it's not that long because you can teleport around so liberally in the game.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, no, I'm past that. Yeah. So that's I guess that's the FF update from me. Stuff's good. I shall be continuing the fun post-Titan sort of narrative stuff that's happening with some characters that we care about. We'll see. Yeah, get back to people next week. But it's been stuff. Definitely been fun.